I'll just play music and then die the next morning. I don't. People like me don't retire. What are you gonna do when you retire? I don't like golf.
Today we are ranking the albums of Underoath, starting with Act of Depression in 1999. Yeah, so getting the takes that are going to piss some people off early out of the way on this one. I'm not a big fan of this album, but hear me out. Now, like most people, I came into Underoath when they kind of had their fully formed sort of poppier sound, but I was also already a fan of raw, earlier metalcore from the likes of Converge, Dead Guy, etc. before that. The production actually reminds me a lot of Opposite of December from Poison the Well from that same year, which is one of my all-time favorite albums. But therein lies my point. There are just so many other bands that were doing this style and sound better at this point, in my opinion. Plenty of needlessly overlong, messy, meandering songs that feel very thrown together. They also rip off the Deftones' Engine No. 9 riff on Heart of Stone. The one plus I will give it is the drumming and that dodgeball snare tone. Like that, that always hits for me. But beyond that, I just don't really enjoy going back to it. And within the scope of what is to come from this band, it's just low for me. It's okay. It's not terrible. I can listen to it, but I'd much rather be listening to so many other like late 90s metalcore albums. They followed that up with Cries of the Past in 2000. Similar thoughts on this one, but I do like it better than the first album, at least to a degree. Songs are a little bit more concise, but not always. It does have their longest song to date in the 11-minute, 24-second And I Dreamt of You. Both of these albums were released on Take Hold Records, but later reissued via Solid State. It's also the first with Christopher Dudley, making it their first time incorporating keyboard effects. Now, on that note, Wikipedia mentions death and black metal influences, but I feel like you have to really, squint or get really high to make that much of a leap. Apparently, Alex Cantwell of Chronicles of Chaos called it Cradle of Filth meets Hatebreed.
Right.
I guess I can hear some Cradle in the synth, especially on the title track, but for the most part, no. That description I think fits much better for Bleeding Through, although replace Cradle with Dimmu Borgir. Anyways, decent atmosphere. I do like some of the acoustic parts. Still say it's okay, but again, I'll move it slightly better than the last one at least. Then we got The Changing of Times in 2002. Now we're getting into more enjoyable territory for me. You can sort of start hearing their sound coming together, especially with the more melodic turn. They had their first music video from the opening track, which is a solid one. Not quite fully formed yet, but the songwriting is definitely tighter than the first two, going into more typical kind of 3-minute song territory, and the twinkly, drifty guitar work reminds me a lot of early Hopesfall. And notably, they had just released their EP No Wings to Speak of the year before, and the Satellite Year is this same year. But then you also have some weirder stuff like the 80s rock-style synths on Angel Below. This is the last album with original vocalist Dallas, and the first with Timothy McTagg on guitar, also their first album via Solid State Records after moving off of Take Hold. I've even heard some say that this is their favorite album, and as always, that's fine. Treasure it if that's the case. I like it well enough, but I definitely prefer the albums to come over it, and would rather listen to Hopesfall, again, if I'm in the mood for something like this. Really check out that No Wings to Speak of EP if you've never done that, because it is S-tier stuff. But this one, I'm just putting it at good tier. But that brings us to their Only Chasing Safety in 2004. So let's not even try your eyes. Now this album is spectacular, legendary even in the scene. I remember when I first heard it, I was more into kind of heavier stuff at the time, so it felt a little bit too pop-punky, but man, every time I listened to it, it just got better and better, and I became addicted. This one was written by drummer and clean vocalist Aaron Gillespie, and now with Spencer coming in hot with the harsh vocals. And every song in this album is just fantastic. You've got this awesome opener with Young and Aspiring, A Boy Brushed Red living in black and white, Down Set Go, I'm Content with Losing. The dynamics on this album are so good, and it's kind of doing a little bit, again, of pop punk and post-hardcore flavor coming in, especially on tracks like Reinventing Your Exit. And of course, my all-time favorite track, It's a Dangerous Business, Walking Out Your Front Door. That song alone, I could probably talk about for like 10 minutes. There's so much going on there, so many amazing parts. It's hard to pick just one clip from it because so many moments. Just a spectacular album. If you somehow haven't listened to it, please do. If there was one album I'd recommend from Underoath, it would actually be this one. I am going to put it at perfection. Next up is Define the Great Line in 2006. This was released on Tooth and Nail Records and produced by Adam D of Killswitch Engage fame, making it even more hype for me coming off of that last one. I was in college at this point, so I was catching all the little trailers for it on various music stations, and thankfully it delivered. Great opener here, seeming to go for a darker, heavier sound while still sustaining a lot of the catchy elements of the previous album. Writing on the Walls was a great single. You can't not sing along to that one if you're an Underoath fan. Another album packed with great tracks, Everyone Looks So Good From Here is a banger with more super heavy vocals, also Flatline, A Moment Suspended in Time, and You're Ever So Inviting. I have so many fond memories of listening to this one in the dorm while playing Halo 2 like non-stop and talking to my Xbox Live buddies who also loved it. More extremely catchy songwriting with the whole band at the top of their game. This one is also going to perfection. They followed that up with Lost in the Sound of Separation in 2008. This was initially the last album with Aaron, which was kind of the end of an era, because he's just such a core component to the band's sound. I remember when I first got this album, again, hype because I loved the last two, but I gotta say, at the time, I was pretty let down.
But that's simply not possible.
No, seriously, really, like, honestly, I kind of hated this album when it first came out. I remember listening to it on the subway, going between classes in Chicago, and just trying so hard to like it, but I just couldn't do it. Especially because I had pre-ordered the physical copy. Like, you kind of had to do that back then. We didn't have Spotify and all these streaming services. Like, there were options to pre-listen to albums, but not as many. But more proof on why it's important to revisit things and why I never give, like, a set-in-stone take on anything, because my opinions change all the time based on how things hit me at different times in my life. And thankfully that happened with this album in a big way. Playing a lot of Desperate Times, Desperate Measures on Rock Band was definitely instrumental in that. And then I also really like Fault Line, A Fault of Mine, and Breathing in a New Mentality. Anyone can dig a hole, but it takes a real man to call it home, and Too Bright to See, Too Loud to Hear are all very good tracks. That said, there are some tracks in the middle that kind of lose me, so it's a little bit more inconsistent. Not as strong as the last two, but still pretty strong nonetheless. It almost like straddles Great and Fantastic for me, but for now I'm feeling fantastic. I know some people would put this one at perfection. That brings us to Disambiguation in 2010. Now, this was an album that I didn't really have any expectations for at the time, coming off of the last one, and it's still not one I go back to very often, despite also owning a physical copy of it. One of their weakest opening portions of an album with In Division, Catch Myself, Catching Myself, and Paper Long, all pretty dull if you ask me. Maybe the torches are going to come out for that, I don't know. It does have some jams like Illuminator, but it lacks the same catchiness throughout its entirety, like largely in part due to Aaron's absence, I think. Props for some of the heavy parts though. Divine Eradication is another standout on this front. Also dig the drumming on Vacant Mouth as well as My Deteriorating Incline. Still was spinning but more inconsistent than the last one and just lacking the same magic and balance, I would say. I'm still going to put it at great tier. It's enjoyable enough, just not one of my favorites. That brings us to Erase Me in 2018. The comeback album with Aaron back in the saddle. Hype was back for this one too because it had been a long time, almost a decade, and I built up some nostalgia over those years. So it was enough for me to be like, hell yeah, new Underoath, especially when I heard the ripping On My Teeth, which I might even put in the top 10 for their songs. Unfortunately, nothing else here really comes close to that same level, and it feels like this record has some of the same issues that new Architects albums were going through around the same time. Songs like Wake Me and I Hate It that are just a little bit too much on the like modern pop sentiment side of things, even for them. And it's disappointing to see a track named like Bloodlust and then get something without any real bite to it. Rapture is also just kind of okay.
Take me to the darkness, hang me out to dry.
I do at least enjoy Hold Your Breath with the D-beats and fun catchy chorus too. A little bit Norma Jeannie on some areas of that one. Not terrible, and coming back to it I feel like I can appreciate some of it a bit more than when it came out, but it still feels pretty mid as a whole. Very disappointing. Erase this album. I'm sure somebody's made that joke already. For maybe like 100 people. But anyways, yeah, this is going to okay. I don't know if it's my least favorite. I might listen to it a little bit more than those first two, but yeah, it's down here somewhere. Then we got Voyeurist in 2022.
Slow down, you can't get out of yourself, man.
Back to low expectations because of that last one, but once more, the first single, Damn Excuses, got me really excited. Such an explosive opener for the album. It just sounds so pissed, from the harsh snarls to the more frantic scream singing, and does a good job of setting up the overall dark tone of this record. Other aggressive tracks in a similar vein include Thorn, which aside from its punishing beats delivers on dynamic range with softer moments for further contrast, and We're All Gonna Die, true to its blunt title, is just right up in your face with its nihilistic lyrics and no-nonsense vocal delivery. I was jamming that one before I started recording again this week. And then, of course, there's also Cycle, which combines the new and old schools with a feature from Ghostmane. Very heavy one, banger through and through, while also managing to be very atmospheric at the same time, thanks to the dense layers of synth and backing vocals. On the flip side, I'm Out of Luck has more of a trance-like vibe and makes for a soothing break before it all goes crazy again in its final third. No Oasis makes for an eerie refrain just over the halfway point, and Numb, despite having plenty of hard-hitting sections of its own, goes in on the electronic breaks in a more melancholic chorus. The choral vocals on Hallelujah have also grown on me. That was a criticism I had early on, but I think coming back to it now, I'm on board. The phrase that most came to mind while listening to this album was, Underoath is back, baby. Massive improvement over the previous album, and possible hot take, I may like it better than Lost.
Stop it! Stop it!
I'm gonna get some hate for that for sure, but that's just how I'm feeling right now. And I encourage you all, by the way, hit the like button if you're enjoying the video, hit the dislike if you dislike, but please do comment your own rankings, because again, this is just my opinion. And do you really want me to just parrot what you think? Like, are you that lame? Are you that much of a drone? Like, you need me to validate your feelings and then you, like, cry if I disagree with you? Like, that's not healthy behavior. Like, it's music, man. Chill. It makes discussion more interesting when we disagree. So please, by all means, sound off on that down in the comments. But that brings us to the place after this one in 2025. So the best words I can use to describe this album are confusing and whiplash. Generation No Surrender is kind of a corny title, but there's no denying that this track goes hard and gives me a lot of Desperate Times, Desperate Measures energy. Also getting that from the riffs on Spinning in Place, and I'm definitely banging my head to Loss with those D-beats and general sense of velocity. Alternatively, some of the experimentation really leaves me scratching my head, though it's usually just moments rather than entire songs. All the Love Is Gone, for instance, I mostly really like, but that corpse-esque rapping at the beginning isn't exactly vibing with me. Devil is pretty solid overall, especially with some of the heavier parts mixed in and those backing vocals ripe for audience participation towards the end, but the electro-pop energy feels a little bit half-baked and at times even cheesy in execution. Same with Shame, the synth-poppy chorus and general use of auto-tune is kind of a tough sell, and I actually can't decide how much I like Survivor's Guilt. Some really incredible drumming on that one, and it's seriously catchy, but that chorus does give me a little too much contrived radio pop energy. There's actually a specific song it's reminding me of, but I can't quite put my finger on it. And then Vultures with the Troy Sanders Mastodon feature and Cannibal also ride this really strange line where I simultaneously like and dislike them somehow at the same time, like a metalcore Schrodinger's box. But the one that really put some people off as a whole was Teeth. Respect to the band for the ballsy move of making this clearly divisive song a single. And there are aspects of it that are musically interesting, but those clean vocals. I will say, though, that the super soft energy of this one makes its harsh sections hit all the harder, though, and with repeat listens, this one has actually been kind of growing on me. On a more general note, I really do like the synth work. They definitely made that more of a centerpiece on this album, even letting it largely close things out on Outsider. But man, I am so perplexed in my thoughts on this one, and I think it's going to take a while for me to truly sort it out. On the one hand, I deeply respect the band for taking some heavy swings creatively, and I do think that the result makes for a much more interesting and thought-provoking album than Erasement. But on the other, I don't find myself genuinely enjoying it nearly as much as Voyeurist, and the pop elements definitely jump the shark at times. So for now, I'm actually thinking probably great tier, and we'll just have to see what the future holds. I do think that there's potential there. Y'all check out this playlist for more metalcore rankings, or this for your personal YouTube recommendation, but that'll do it for now. Flight of Icarus signing off. I will see you in the trenches.